Is it still worth it to be loyal to your job and company? For past generations, the answer was a yes. Staying committed to one employer for your entire career used to be a badge of honor. It signaled you were a committed, hard-working employee that companies wanted to hold on to. But times have really changed. These days, more and more workers are questioning whether devoting themselves to a single company pays off in the long run. Especially among younger people, there is a rising sense of skepticism about the once sacred idea of job loyalty. Why should they stay endlessly committed when employers seem unwilling to commit back?
It took me a while to learn that companies don't really care about you as an individual. They talk a good game, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's just talk.
I'm tired of CEOs telling me millennials these days don't stick around very long. Well, why would they if you don't offer them any kind of loyalty back? And it's not for the people to prove to you that they're loyal, it's the other way around. Leaders set the tone.
To understand why blind loyalty to an employer doesn't make sense anymore, we have to look at how the classic relationship between companies and their workers has been upended. There used to be an implied psychological contract where employees traded their hard work and dedication for financial security and a sense of belonging. Businesses rewarded tenure with progressively better pay, benefits like healthcare and pensions, and a career path towards advancement. Workers felt a strong attachment to the companies they stuck with. This unwritten social contract began fraying in the 1980s and 90s as corporate America was shaken by globalization. Facing new pressures from foreign competitors, many US companies looked to cut costs by any means necessary. That meant layoffs, outsourcing jobs overseas, slashing benefits, and shifting away from pensions towards self-directed retirement plans. Survival became the priority, and employee loyalty took a back seat. According to research by psychologist Denise Rousseau, who coined the term psychological contract, businesses began viewing workers as disposable and easily replaceable. There was no longer a mutual understanding of loyalty being a two-way street. Even high performers started getting let go through no fault of their own whenever economic winds shifted. Corporations showed their commitment was to stockholders above all else, not to the human beings keeping things running day to day. So the psychological contract that made company loyalty a reasonable expectation had been fundamentally broken. Raises and promotions were no longer a given for those who checked the long tenure box, and workers who stayed loyally aboard started realizing they may have been better off regularly testing their value on the open job market. With the pandemic layoffs and the Great Resignation, any remaining vestiges of the old social contract breathed their last gasps. It became crystal clear that corporate loyalty is a relic, replaced by a more transactional, impersonal relationship between companies and workers. The unsaid understanding now, we have no future obligations to each other beyond today's paycheck and workload. Employers see human capital as fundamentally disposable and reversible, while employees need to always be looking ahead for the next best option. But is this new status quo necessarily a negative thing for workers? Many would argue the rise of the free agent employee mindset offers some key advantages in today's economy. With the traditional model of lifetime employment and company loyalty fading away, workers today have been forced to adopt a more independent free agent mindset. But this shift isn't all negative. It also opens up some significant potential benefits. As a free agent employee, you get to prioritize your career growth and development above all else. Rather than letting your skills and market value stagnate at one company, you're free to constantly be exploring other opportunities and evolving your professional toolkit to stay on the cutting edge. Data shows that employees who change companies every few years end up earning significantly higher compensation over the course of their careers compared to those who stay put. You have the flexibility to follow the money and opportunities, rather than waiting for incremental raises and promotions that may never come from an employer resting on their crowns. Being a free agent also insulates you from the risks of corporate restructuring, refocusing, or just general mismanagement. If your employer starts making bad decisions that put your future at risk, you can read the writing on the wall and update your resume guilt-free. No more going down with a sinking ship out of misplaced loyalty. Most importantly, the free agent lifestyle encourages you to remain a professional who takes full ownership of your skills and value proposition. You'll always be studying the market to ensure you're being properly compensated and developed. Contrast that with the complacency that can set in when you have a false sense of security and belonging tied to one company for decades. Too many talented people have let themselves go stale that way and been blindsided when the rug was inevitably pulled out from under them. As a self-directed employee, you take control of your employment trajectory and take risks. Company loyalty can make you disposable by allowing your skills and options to erode over time. So while the comfortable lifetime employment and unbreakable company loyalty may seem unfortunate in a nostalgic sense, it's also a wake-up call and opportunity for workers to adopt a more empowered, proactive stance in managing their careers. Of course, being a free agent means taking full responsibility for setting yourself up for lasting success. The risks of clinging to an outdated mentality of unconditional company loyalty can't be overstated. Getting lulled into a false sense of security at one employer can be professionally crippling and deprive you of long-term earnings potential. Let's illustrate this with a personal story. Mark was a model corporate soldier who gave over 20 years of dedicated service to the same big company. He wasn't an ambitious climbing performer, but a reliable reliable, steady contributor. Year after year, he received the same thoroughly average performance review. Nothing to get too excited about, but no glaring deficiencies either. So when the axe fell during a restructuring, Mark was blindsided. After giving his professional life to the company, he was called into an HR meeting and casually let go. Just like that, his unwavering loyalty was repaid with a pink slip. But the real damage was done slowly over decades as Mark let his skills and market value stagnate. When he tried to re-enter the job market, he struggled mightily. Not only were his technological capabilities and industry knowledge now woefully outdated, but younger job seekers were willing to work for far less than his previous salary. In the end, Mark was forced to take a significantly lower paying job just to get his foot in the door somewhere new. All those years of being a dedicated employee counted for little. His unconditional loyalty had actually made him professionally disposable over time. Mark's tale reflects a harsh truth. Employers don't reward loyalty and tenure like they used to. In fact, the opposite is often true. Companies see employees who haven't tested their market value in a long time as expensive liabilities to shed during tough times. Complacent company men and women who expect their loyalty to be rewarded are instead being replaced by hungrier external candidates with more modern skill sets and lower salary demands. So while being dedicated and working hard at one's job is admirable, letting that diligence turn into blind organizational allegiance can ultimately make you outdated. The new economics of employment puts a premium on in-demand skills. Does that mean no one should feel any sense of pride or commitment to their employer? Of course not, but a balanced mindset is required. As employee loyalty has decreased, many employers have responded in unproductive ways that only further erode trust and goodwill. Rather than making efforts to rebuild the psychological contract, corporations are doubling down with retaliatory tactics against anyone showing disloyalty. Perhaps nothing exemplifies this hostile approach more than the recent proliferation of employee tracking surveillance software, aimed at detecting supposed quiet quitters, or those moonlighting with side gigs. These platforms give employers unprecedented visibility into how employees are spending their time. By logging keyboard strokes, webcam usage, websites visited, and other digital actions, these analytics tools supposedly sniff out any disloyalty or lack of productivity. But their real impact is eliminating any sense of workplace autonomy and further severing the employer-employee relationship. Similarly, some companies are using heavy-handed legal agreements like training repayment clauses to trap employees. If someone dares to quit before an arbitrary tenure window, these agreements can allow the employer to recoup thousands for any job training or professional development costs. Such harsh practices are the opposite of building a mutually loyal culture. They breed resentment and incentivize employees to start quietly checking out or interviewing elsewhere from day one. The disconnect is perhaps most evident in the shift towards more transactional work models enabled by technology. Remote work, gig work, contractor roles, these approaches tend to emphasize an emotionless, transaction-based exchange of skills for cash. Employers love these arm's-length models for the flexibility and lack of long-term commitments required.
I fucking love that.
Employees often appreciate the independence as well, but the transactional nature destroys any cultural loyalty to an organization when everyone is just temporary labor for hire. If the stereotypical company's mindset is to treat human capital as convertible overhead to be swiftly added or cut, is it any surprise when that attitude gets reflected right back by employees giving the bare minimum effort? So as corporations gripe about adversarial relationships and skyrocketing turnover, many of their own policies and behavioral norms are actively torching the remnants of goodwill and mutual loyalty that still exist. The days of lifelong company loyalty being the default norm are over. The unraveling of the traditional psychological contract between employers and employees has led to a more transactional, mercenary relationship in the modern workforce. The most successful path forward requires giving employees a reason to want to be loyal again through profit sharing, professional development opportunities, and a genuine cultural bond. Meeting those priorities can re-engage workers in a shared mission and bring in the demonstrated benefits of a dedicated, tenured workforce. I encourage you to check out my recent video on why 9-5 is dying for millennials and Gen Z. It offers an insightful look at how workplace attitudes and priorities are shifting for the rising generations of employees.